Good morning, Cougs. Welcome to your Coug Connect for August 13th, 2020. My name is Erin Hansen, and I am a human resource consultant based on the Everett campus. Today, I am here to bring you part 3 of my tips and tricks for the Microsoft Office suite of programs. Part 1 covered Word, part 2 covered Outlook, and today in part 3, we'll discuss tips and tricks in Microsoft Excel. As I've said in my other Coug Connect sessions, some of these you may already be aware of, but you may learn a thing or two, hopefully. Before we get started, a small disclaimer, something you should know about me is that it's not fair to say that I hate math, because I don't. Math is good, math is great, math is totally necessary. But what I can say is that I hate doing math, and therefore I love Excel. There are a few things to me more satisfying than a well-made spreadsheet. Plus, the lazy part of me really likes having Excel do the work for me, especially because it's not just the math that Excel will do for me. When I created this presentation, I actually ended up having to remove a ton of content because there were so many cool things that I wanted to share. So please forgive me if I get a little bit nerdy today, but I just really enjoy this stuff. So before we begin, as with the previous sessions, a quick tip is that many of the functions we use today will use one of the keys on, or more, I guess, if you use them in pairs, on the screen. So Control, Shift, and Alt. Again, please note that these are specific to Windows platforms, though my understanding is they work in Apple systems as well. You'll just use the control key, or sorry, the commands key instead of the control key. Let's see if I can talk a little bit better the rest of this. All right, and now things are going to get confusing. So while many of the functions in Excel work the same as they do in Word and Outlook, there are some in Excel that are a bit different. So on the left side of the screen, you'll see that I've listed functions that are the same as those in Word and Outlook when you're composing something, whereas those on the right are not the same. For those of you who didn't already take part 1 or part 2 where we covered Word and Outlook, head over to the Coug Connect page on the HRS website and navigate to the View Past Recorded Coug Connect sessions and take a look after we finish today. So things like bold, underline, italicize, copy, paste, undo, redo, new, open, save, print, find, all that's going to work the same way. As for the items on the right side of the slide, the ones in yellow at the top, we'll address those momentarily. The ones in the bottom in orange, we are not going to address because they don't really function the same way at all. And that's starting to get a bit more complicated and probably beyond my level. I should note that while I love Excel, I am by no means an expert. There are certainly formulas and things that I just have to kind of stumble my way through, and I definitely do not know everything about the program. Truthfully, sometimes it's just a case of trial and error before I figure out how I need to write a formula to get the results that I'm actually looking for. And while I learned a lot of these in an Excel course, there are also things I've just learned by poking around and trying things out. So if you're interested in learning more about Excel, Word, or Outlook, or other platforms, even like Microsoft Forms, you can always log in to Skillsoft and search for courses there. As a reminder, full-time employees are entitled to 96 hours of training release time per year to attend training sessions, and that hourly amount is prorated for part-time employees. And if learning more about these programs would help you be more efficient with your job, your supervisor can also direct you to take this training as well. And if you've been directed to take the training, your supervisor can make the determination as to whether or not those hours are going to count toward your annual release time total. Employees working less than half-time, probationary civil service employees and temp hourly or student employees are not eligible for that release time. However, they can attend directed training. If you want to learn more about that, rather than ramble on about the policy, go ahead and read Business Policies and Procedures Manual, section 60.72, or feel free to reach out to your supervisor. They can help you with that as well. Anyway, back on to Excel. So I don't recommend fiddling around in spreadsheets that are a document that, for example, maybe you share it with your team. But you can certainly save a copy of that spreadsheet and fiddle around in it separately in order to test out some of the functions. Just make sure you're not, editing a document and saving over anything if you're trying to figure out these formulas and stuff. And on that note, let's just get started. So first, let's talk about navigating Excel. And as many of you know, you can press the tab key and you can move to the next cell to the right on the column that you're in. But you can also press Control and Shift tab to press to go back the other direction. And you can do the same thing with Enter. So Enter will move you down a cell, or if you press Shift Enter, it's going to move you up a cell instead. On that same kind of level of difficulty, if you will, you can use the arrow keys to move, up, down, right, left. But if you use the Control plus the arrow keys, it's going to actually move to the edge of the current region in the worksheet. So basically, it's going to move in a linear fashion, and it will move to the last occupied cell in your current data set. Control plus Shift plus the arrow key will select all the text in the direction of the arrow. So basically, holding down the Shift key functions sort of like you're holding down the left mouse button. The end and the arrow keys will move to the next non-blank cell in the same column or row as an active cell. Control and the page up or page down keys will move to the next sheet or previous sheet in a workbook, which I find pretty handy when you've got a multi-sheet workbook. Alt and the page up or page down functions move one screen to the right or left, whereas just using the page up and page down keys obviously will move the page up and page down as it would in Word or Outlook. And oh, and if I forgot to mention this, I will be demonstrating all these later, so not to worry. All right, in addition to using Control A, like I showed in one of the previous slides, which would select everything, that's going to select the entire worksheet. You can also use Control Shift Spacebar in a similar way. This is sort of conditional because if you press those same buttons again, it will actually select the entire worksheet, not just the data set, which is like pressing Control A. But if you only press it once, it just selects the current data set. Shift and the arrow keys will extend your cell selection by 1. So if you're pressing, Shift and you're pressing the arrow over, it's going to keep selecting more and more cells. Shift and the spacebar will select an entire row, whereas Control and the spacebar selects an entire column. The way I keep these straight in my head is that I think about the C in Control goes with the C in column. So the Shift is for the row, Control is for column. Control and the home or end buttons will move to the top left or bottom right cell of your data set. Basically think about it going on opposite ends of the spreadsheet, if you will. And Control Shift home or end will extend the selection of cells to that same upper or lower corner from wherever your currently selected cell is. F5 will also allow you to go directly to a specific cell. So that can be really handy when you're navigating through a whole lot of data. So say you've got a spreadsheet that's got 1,000 rows in it or something, and you need to get to a specific area in it. You can just say, go to row 800 or whatever. So on the previous slide, we talked about using Shift and Space and Control Space to select an entire row or column. Another trick is to use these functions to insert a new row or column. So basically, if you press Shift in the spacebar, then Control and plus sign, it will insert an entire new row. Same thing with the columns. It's important to remember here, though, that the number 1 key that you use, the equal key that you use here is going to be the one on your number pad, or the plus key rather. I'm mixing everything up. The plus key is going to be the one on the number pad. If you don't use the one on the number pad, it's not going to function the same way. So unfortunately, I can't use some of these functions when I'm just on my laptop and not using a separate keyboard because my laptop doesn't have a number pad. So you can kind of take that for what it is. And then let's see. Also, if you do the Control plus sign, it will also open the insert dialog box, and you can shift cells down or right, or do the same functions I just mentioned about inserting a whole new column or row. You can also do the same with the Control minus key, and you can essentially remove a row or column. Control 0 will hide a column, and you can essentially just Control Z to undo that if you want to unhide it, if you will. Control 9 will hide the current row. And when you're typing information into a cell and want to just essentially undo whatever you're typing, you can just press the escape key. That'll cancel the entry in the cell or formula bar. Control plus enter will complete your current entry that you're typing in to a cell, but will stay in the same cell instead of moving to the next cell. Alt enter will allow you to enter a new line of text or data in the same cell that you're currently in. So often, if you're moving quickly and you press enter, you're thinking, oh, I just want to enter in a new line like I would if I were in Word or something. It's going to move you down to the next cell. But if you use the alt enter, it will move you down in that same cell, just another line. Moving on to some quick editing, 2 of the most basic and, in my opinion, useful functions are the alt equal sign and Control plus apostrophe. So alt and equal sign will allow you to sum the data in the cells before the one you selected. Control plus the apostrophe will allow you to switch between displaying cell values or formulas. So if there's a formula versus seeing the actual value, you'll be able to distinguish between the two that way. F2 will allow you to insert data or open and edit the currently selected cell much faster than it would if you were just double clicking with a mouse. Shift and F2 will insert or open and edit a cell note, and Shift and F11 will insert a new worksheet. These next few address formatting and filtering text. So Control Shift L allows you to add and remove filters quickly. Control 1 opens up the Format Cells Options window, and Control 5 will allow you to apply or remove a strike through. Some additional formatting and filtering functions are the drag and drop function, but you'll use your Shift key before you let go, essentially, so that you're inserting data and not overwriting data. Alt and the semicolon key will allow you to show any hidden cells. There's a little bit of a visual indication that shows you whether or not there's anything that's hidden. Control and the semicolon key will allow you to date stamp something, and Control Shift and the colon will allow you to timestamp something quickly. And then Control W is just going to allow you to quickly close the workbook that you're in. All right, last slide here. You can use the Control Shift and the tilde sign to change the format of a number to the general number format. You can use Control Shift $sign to change it to the currency format, and that'll change it with essentially currency with 2 decimal places, and the negative numbers it will be in parentheses. Control Shift % will apply the percentage format with no decimal places. Control Shift ! will apply the number format with 2 decimal places, a thousand separator, and a minus sign for negative values. Control and the grave accent key, which is the one at the top left of your keyboard. It looks a lot like I'm losing my words. Apostrophe. It looks a lot like an apostrophe, but it's actually at the top. It's next to the tilde sign above the tab key. That will allow you to switch between displaying cell values or formulas in a worksheet. Control Shift and the ampersand will apply an outline border to selected cells, and Control Shift underline will remove the outline border from selected cells. Alrighty, now that I've sped through all that, let's see if we can put some of this to use. Bear with me here while I pull this up. Alrighty, now you should be able to see a spreadsheet, and I promise I'm paying more attention to the chat today, so just pop something into the chat if you see that it's not working. Okay, so I've developed this little spreadsheet using Harry Potter characters, and essentially saying that they would be new students, but at Hogwarts, not at WSU. And this is just the spreadsheet I'm going to use for the purposes of today's demonstration. So as I mentioned, the tab key is just going to move one cell to the right. If I pressed Shift tab, it's going to move back to the left. Using the Enter key is going to move down. Moving Shift Enter is going to move back up. You can use the arrow keys, moving up, down, left, right, or you can just, use Control and the arrow keys, and it's actually going to move to the edge of the current data set. So as you can see, there's an entire another data set over here that I just copied and pasted the exact same information, but there's blank cells in between those. So essentially it's only moving to the edge of the current data set, up, down, right, left, etc. Then if you want to select all the text in the direction of that arrow, you'll use Control Shift in that arrow. So again, it's only going to go to the edge of the current data set. If I do Control Shift down, it's going to select everything within that range. And then end and the arrow keys will move straight down to the end of whatever row or column you're in, again, in the current data set. This can also be really handy when you're looking at large data sheets, because sometimes, like if you're, say you've got 150 rows of something and you don't want to have to keep scrolling through it, you just press that end and then down arrow, and you'll go right to the bottom where you can enter in your new data. Control page up and page down will move to the previous and next worksheet. So I'm going to move over to, I created a couple of other spreadsheets, and I can just go page up to go back to my first one. And then of course, page up, page down is just going to move literally up and if we're looking at my current spreadsheet here, we see that Natalie McDonald is row 19. She's at the bottom. If I press page down, it's going to go to row 20, will now be at the top. So just page up, page down. And Alt and page up and page down will move to the right and left. Same thing with regard to how far it moves. It just moves to the edge of the screen. And then Control Shift Space, as I mentioned, Control Shift Space will select the entire data set. If I press that again, it's going to actually select the entire worksheet. So it's similar to pressing Control A. Control A is like using the data set, but then you can also press the Control A twice as well. And okay, so Shift and the arrow keys is obviously just going to extend your selection by 1 in any direction. And Shift and Space will allow you to select an entire column. And I'm sorry, that was Control Space. Shift Space is a row. And then if I want to do a column, it's Control Space. Control and the Home or End keys is going to extend your selection to the last used cell. Control Home, I'm sorry, it'll jump to last or first cell. Control End, either way, going top or bottom. And then Control Shift Home End, Control Shift Home, going to select everything essentially to that top corner from where I was at. And if I go Control Shift End, it's going to go down to the bottom of the data set. And there's clearly some data in here that's not visible because it's going farther down than it in theory should. And let's see, next, F5. So say I want to go down to a specific student in Slytherin or something. Let's go F5, and I'm just going to say that they're in, I don't know where they're actually at. So we'll say A36. I didn't make it down, I made it Hufflepuff, but either way, it's easy to navigate directly to a certain cell that you're looking for. All right, and then Control and Plus will allow you, that opens basically the dialog box, as I mentioned, but if you use it with the keys that we mentioned earlier about the Control Spacebar and Shift Spacebar. So Shift Spacebar, Control Plus, again, having to use the number pad 1 for that. I'm going to undo that, or Control Spacebar, Control Plus to add a new column. And then I'm going to undo that as well. And I can say Control 0 to hide my current column, and do that as well. And then I can say Control 9. Oh, that didn't do that. Let's see. Oh, that's fine. Control 9 hides that that row. Ta-da. If I am typing something in, so for whatever reason I want to retype Blaze's name down here, and I decide, oh, actually, no, I didn't need to do that. I can just press Escape, and it just undoes that editing that I just did. And and if I wanted to redo it again, Blaze, B-L-A-I-S-E, if I press Control Enter, it's going to complete. It'll essentially finish entering that data, but it's not going to move down. It's not going to move the selected cell down like it normally would when you just press Enter. And then for whatever reason, just for kicks, if I say I want to say Blaze Zabini, and I'm going to say it in the same cell, if I do Alt Enter, now it's going to enter his name, his last name on a second line. Okay, then now down here, what I'm going to do is basically the spreadsheet that this fun little one I've created. House points is whatever Dumbledore decided to allot to these students. I'm going to delete my formula down here, but if I press Alt equals, that's right, Alt equals sign, it's going to automatically sum all the data above that. And Excel is pretty smart. I mean, obviously there are limitations, but that's going to allow me to quickly just select all that data. If I had something over here, Alt equals, it's going to try to sum that data instead. So, use caution, but it is pretty handy stuff there. And okay, Control So I just press Control and the apostrophe key. That's going to now show me that I have a formula hidden in that cell, and that's how I compiled that data. So basically what I did when I created this was pulled out the name, the house, and actually that might have been it, the name and the house of each student. And I was able to actually pull all the data that you see and create that data using formulas. So the cell that I'm in specifically, I combined to F69 and H69. Okay, and then I'm going to undo that again. Okay. If I'm in this cell and I want to edit it, I can just press F2 rather than double clicking, and I can change it. I can, if I want to enter a new note, so maybe I'm trying to keep track of whatever I've allotted recently, and I'm going to say Shift and F2 to insert a new note. Plays gets 1 demerit, something like that. And then I can also, you can use the same function just to edit that same note, any note in a spreadsheet. Shift and F11 allows you to insert a new worksheet, as you see here. And then Control Shift L, move it to the top here, Control Shift L. As you can see, just remove my filters up at the top, because I'm not on the right one anymore. Control Shift L to re-add them. Control and 1 will allow you to open the Format Options dialog box. I'm just going to press OK to get out of there. Control 5 will add or remove a strike through. So as you can see, I've put a strike through colon previous name. I can do Control 5 and I can add or take away that same strike through. If I want to move things along in a spreadsheet, I can use the drag and drop function. But if I say I want to move column down here and unclick basically to drop in there, it's going to say, hey, you're going to paste over the top of that data. Do you want to do that? No. What I'm actually going to do is do that same thing, but I'm going to press the Shift key. And now it actually will insert the data, and rather than having to overwrite the data that you already had in that column. Okay, Alt and the semicolon is going, oops, not if you're typing in a cell, it won't. Okay. All right, Alt semicolon is going to show you here, like I mentioned, there's a visual indication that there's a hidden cell here. I can tell you that I know it's just the first initial, and again, I used formulas to create a cell that was literally only the first initial of the student. So anyway, that's essentially, if you get a worksheet sent to you and you're trying to see, kind of make sense of what that data means, a good thing to do is check to see if there are any hidden cell values, because that might provide some indication, or if you're able to unhide it and see maybe what the formulas are that they're using, or any hidden data, that can be really helpful. If I want to use Control in the semicolon, it's going to insert a timestamp. Sorry, rather date stamp. And then if I do Control Shift semicolon, it'll enter a timestamp. Control W will close a workbook, but I'm not going to close that yet. And let's see, Control and the tilde sign. So let's say, so this is actually already in the general number format, so we'll do something else first. So Control Shift $. Now for whatever reason, we've decided that those points equal $280. I'm going to now change it to Control Shift tilde. Again, that's up at the top left. Now let's change it back to the general number format. Control Shift exclamation point is going to change it to, like I mentioned, it's got the decimal points, and then any negative numbers are going to be in parentheses. The grave accent will, let's see, Control and grave accent will show you all formulas in a worksheet. I think this one's really helpful, especially if I'm trying to replicate a formula that I've already created, and if it's a complicated formula. I'm going to undo that. Hide all those again. And then Control Shift ampersand, so 7. I've just created a border around that. And now if I do Control Shift underscore, I've erased the border again. So obviously these can be very confusing. Like I said, I love Excel, but it does get kind of burdensome if you're trying to remember all these. And I don't expect anyone to remember everything I said verbatim today or anything, or remember all the things that I said. But if you like, I can certainly send you the cheat sheet that I've created for it. That being said, if there are a couple of these that you are a takeaway where you can reuse them frequently, that's really exactly what we're looking for, is something that will allow you to do your job more efficiently and quickly. I'm a big fan of the work smarter, not harder function, because it allows you to do more work in the same amount of time, essentially. So it makes you more efficient in the end. All righty, and okay, now I can find my screen share again for you. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. Feel free to drop any comments you have into the chat, or if any questions or anything. Like I said, I'm happy to send any notes or anything if you have questions about it specifically. Trying to decide whether or not I really want to get into these specific formulas and things next time to kind of demonstrate how you can use formulas in Excel to do the work for you essentially, and use it to your advantage. So if you have any thoughts or anything, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, please join us next Tuesday for the Beginner's Guide to Canning and Preserving with Alice Ma.